Hello, I'm John Molesky, and this is Wilson Center Now, a production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Today, it's our quarterly look at the latest edition of the Wilson Quarterly, the center's award-winning magazine. And joining us, as always, is editor Stephanie Bowen. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here, John.
Also with us is Daniel Covarrubias. Daniel is one of the contributors to the new issue, and when he's not writing for the WQ, Daniel is director of the Texas Center for Economic and Enterprise Development at the Texas A&M International University, AR Sanchez Jr. School of Business. Daniel, welcome to you as well.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Stephanie, for having me here. A pleasure.
So, Daniel, before we dig into your article, I want to ask Stephanie to set things up and tell us about the current issue. Its title, Stephanie, Strategic Competition, subtitle, Strengthening America's Advantage in a Competitive World. What should readers expect?
Well, as you said, the topic is strategic competition, and which is a really big topic of conversation in our circle these days. With the recent launch of the WABA Institute for Strategic Competition at the Wilson Center, we thought it was a terrific time to highlight some of the important and complex issues that come with strategic competition. And, we really just wanted to put our best foot forward.
So what are the other topics that are covered? Daniel's article is about the southern border, the exact title, A Living Lab at the Southern Border, and we'll unpack that with Daniel in just a moment. But tell us about who some of the other contributors are and what are the topics that they cover.
Yeah, it's a very broad topic. And there's so many factors that go into U.S. competitiveness. We chose to focus on just a few of those factors, really aligning as much as possible with the WABA Institute. So we have articles and essays about trade, energy infrastructure, space, technology, and we have a variety of contributors from both inside and outside the Wilson Center to have a variety of perspectives that I think will really help people understand some of the complexities that go into, creating a competitive edge.
And I know as a top-notch editor that every word matters to you. And so in that subtitle, America's Advantage in a Competitive World assumes America's advantage. What is America's advantage as defined by this collection of articles?
Well, I think really America's advantage is one that embraces innovation and technology and risk and partnerships and, really all of those things that go into giving a competitive edge. If you're looking at a country, if you're looking at a company, if you're looking at a product or, whatever it may be, all of those things contribute to the success.
Yeah, and I guess the proof is in the pudding to some degree, right? When you're talking about a juggernaut economy, one of those juggernaut economies. So, Daniel, in your piece, you talk about a fourth industrial revolution, also known as Industry 4.0, which in your copy says it will change how businesses operate and the environments where they compete. Unpack that for us a little bit. What are we talking about in terms of this 4.0 environment?
Well, the Industry 4.0 concept, or that fourth industrial revolution, it's something that's already happening, and in some places to a degree more than in others. It's not something new, but it comes from the different industrial revolutions that have existed throughout time. If we all remember the first industrial revolution that many of us were taught while at school, it was the whole development of the steam engine in the United Kingdom, and how that changed. How you could use more force and less labor to produce, and with the creation of the steam engine. Then you went to the second industrial revolution of what we now call production lines, right? And how production is done in these mass production lines. The third one was using computing power, and they're all mainly in the manufacturing sector. That's where these industrial revolutions happen. So the third one was putting computers in the machines that produce all these different objects and things. And this fourth one is actually the interface between human and machine, right? And that how we use the cloud, how we use a lot of sensors, how we use data, what we do with that data, how different technologies such as the Internet of Things, how cybersecurity, data analytics, how all those technologies are interrelated and how they're used in production facilities. But what we went ahead and did here at Texas A&M International University here in the border in Laredo, Texas, was try to apply that industrial revolution to what is logistics. And that's what we came up with this concept called logistics, which is a play on word on logistics and technology, but it's basically how these exponential technologies, as they're called, the ones I just mentioned, impact logistics and supply chain and transportation and so on.
So I just should tell our viewers, we're talking about, just so you're not confused by the semantics, logistics, T-E-C-H-S, invoking technology. And so this is a long way from steam engines to blockchains and cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Where the rubber meets the road, Daniel, that's all confusing to lay people or non-tech inclined people. How does this change businesses, or how does it change the experience for consumers in their daily lives?
Well, first of all, you have to, I guess, for your viewers, understand where we're at, right? And what Laredo represents to the United States and the whole global trade community. I mean, Laredo, Texas, obviously it's on the border with Mexico. It's a population of 260,000 people that live here in Laredo, but it's one of the most important land ports of entry. It's the most important land ports of entry, one of the most important ports of entry into the United States. Every year through Laredo, $250 billion in trade are processed, which is 7.8 million people cross the border through Laredo, 3 million passenger vehicles, 2.5 million commercial trucks. Every day through Laredo alone, you get 17,000 commercial trucks that cross the border. So that's a lot of trade that moves through here. Many times when we talk about the important ports, we always reference the seaports like Long Beach, Los Angeles. We reference the airports like Chicago or New York, but land ports are quite important, and Laredo's always there in the top 3 of the most important ports. So now we need to create those efficiencies, because crossing, 16,000 or 17,000 trucks a day through one port of entry, well, you can imagine what can happen if you add seconds or minutes to inspection points, right? So that's where we came up with trying to see or pilot these technologies to see how we could create better efficiencies, right? So you go into technologies such as the Internet of Things, and when you listen to the Internet of Things, well, that basically means that we have smart devices that are connected to the internet, but that also give us data and that we could do actionable things with that data. So the Internet of Things and these sensors are having an impact on these companies in that they improve visibility and tracking of their objects and of their produce or whatever it is that they're trying to export or import from Mexico to the United States and vice versa. So it gives them increased visibility and tracking of it. It gives them the ability, these sensors connected to these machines or to these trucks and these trailers, gives companies the ability to have better maintenance, and it's what's called predictive maintenance. So when we talk about maintenance, many times the maintenance that's done on these trucks, it's either programmed or it's once that the trucks have had something happen to them, right? But with these sensors, we can predict maintenance now, so they keep the life of the trucks going longer. It enhances decision making. It gives you better customer service, because customers obviously call these custom brokers or these transportation companies, and they want to know in real time where their products are, how long it's taking to cross the border, how long it's going to take to their final point of destination. And then another technology we have that we mentioned in the article is blockchain. And that one, it also has the ability to revolutionize how the supply chain and logistics process could work, just because of the real-time transparency and traceability that it can have. And and we go ahead and detail an example of using blockchain within different sectors or different supply chains, and just the improved visibility that it could give to everybody, from the producer to the supplier to the buyer, and more importantly, to the customs authorities. In the United States, it would be Customs and Border Protection. In Mexico, it would be the ANAM, which is the Agencia Nacional de Aduanas. So just for them to have more visibility, we think will make better efficiencies and better crossing times at the border, and that would signify that goods are available for the customers in more rapid times and in better times. So what we're looking at is how these technologies can increase those efficiencies, because trade is going to grow. I mean, trade is not stopping, and it's going to continue growing. And yes, we need more infrastructure, but with the infrastructure we have currently, how can we make it more efficient with these technologies? And
I guess you just described the living lab concept in that you can track all of this in real time.
Yes, and the living lab concept, how we're applying it here, because what we did is we started what we call the Texas A&M International University Logistics Living Lab. And what's a living lab? A living lab is where you can where you can form an ecosystem of different players within a region, within a city, within a constraint of a territorial constraint, right? So here what we did is, well, we have the university and our academic research and support. We went ahead and got a grant, and with that grant, we were able to fund buying several sensors, IoT sensors, be it RFID readers, RFID tags, GPS, Bluetooth, all these types of sensors. And we have now the tracking ability through these sensors and the web platforms that they have. So now we have the testing ability of these different programs and these different products. So what we have within that ecosystem of the living lab is we have the academic side of it, which is producing this research and this testing and this certification. We have the private sector part of it, which is the users, the utilizers of these technologies. And within that private sector part, we also have the suppliers or providers of these technologies. So we start forming this ecosystem. I mean, the big companies, to tell you the truth, John, and I was telling Stephanie also, they don't need us, right? They have all these R&D departments, and they work with all these technologies, and they're set, you know. But the world doesn't just run on big companies, you know. It runs a lot on small and medium-sized companies. And that's what we see here in this border. There's a lot of small, medium-sized companies that can benefit from doing pilot projects with us in this living lab before having to invest in these technologies.
That's great. I mean, when you look at the numbers, people underestimate just how many people are employed by small businesses.
Yes, and it's, I mean, depending on the country but it's always upwards to 95% of people are employed in small businesses. Yeah.
Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks. You know, Daniel, what I really love about your piece, you hit on so many of those issues, is that it brings together public-private partnerships. It brings together technology that enables trade and encourages innovation. I think that all of that is so important. And I'm just curious, when all of these different technologies and pilot programs and things that you work on at Texas A&M, is there something that you'd say is like on the horizon that you can't wait for small businesses, medium businesses to be able to use, that you think might be, you know, transformative, if that's too big of a word, or, you know?
I mean, I guess in this sector of logistics, there's many things right now that can transform any type of business, just like we were mentioning, the use of these sensors to gather data. With the whole Industry 4.0 and fourth industrial revolution, data is gold. It's very, very important. But what's also very important is what you do with that data. I mean, it won't matter if you have tons of data availability if you don't know how to process it, how to clean it, how to analyze it. So with these companies, I mean, many tell you, oh, well, it's because I have this data, and they just don't know how to use it, right? So, I mean, there's systems now that are called warehouse management systems or transport management systems, that can, and yard management systems also, that can let these people better process, clean, and analyze the data they already have. So that's one part of it. The second part of it, and I don't know for small, medium businesses how fast it will get to them, but something that's going to be very transformative for this sector in general, and it's coming up, and it's coming up quite fast, is the use of autonomous vehicles. I mean, I think the use of autonomous vehicles is going to revolutionize how the logistics, supply chain, and transportation sector are managed. You know, just to think that right now drivers, they have to keep a log of how many hours they can drive before they have to take a break for a certain amount of hours and then keep on going. Now, I'm not saying that these vehicles, one thing is to say autonomous, and another thing is to say unmanned. I think there's still going to have to be the presence of a human within these vehicles, but it's going to be a very different, they're going to be playing a very different role than a driver. It's going to be more of a technician, just knowing that all the technology on the vehicle is working, keeping stats and things like that of how the vehicle, but now the vehicle doesn't have to stop. So you're not going to have any lost time within these trucks. So just having that availability of having these autonomous vehicles, and Texas is the state in the United States that's doing the most pilot projects of autonomous vehicles, of autonomous trucks. I'm talking about trucks and trailers, and there's a lot of autonomous trucks now in Texas doing pilot programs of how they're going to be working. So that's something I'm really, really excited for, coming down the road in this logistics space, just because of the impact it's going to have. And blockchain is another big one, just increasing that visibility of everybody from the whole supply chain. It's something that's going to be big.
That sounds very exciting, a little scary, but very exciting. And I'm curious, when you look at these things that are on the horizon, is there something, you know, and that you wish, like, oh, this is one bottleneck that I wish could clear the way for this transformation? Or are there things like, what's needed to really bring on the transformation? Is it extra money, more you know, regulation that needs to be cleared or something?
I mean, I think it has to be the work of several partnerships. I think it has to be the private sector, obviously financing this. Like you say, money, there's never going to be enough, right? Especially with all these new technologies that we know that startups invest so much in them, and many things can go wrong, right? Before you get from a prototype to actually minimum viable product, and then to actually that's something that's working right now. So money, I guess it's always going to be an issue, but that's why all those venture firms and venture capitalists are going to keep on funding these startups in the hopes of hitting the next unicorn. But I think other sectors are important, and I think the public sector, you touched on something. I mean, public policy is always going to be needed. Regulations are always going to be needed. So having the work of private, public sectors, and then academia, it's another important one, because that's where you're going to train the people that are going to be using these technologies, and how they're going to be using. So you're going to get all sorts of, even at a lower level, maybe high school, even at lower levels, getting people to think about these technologies and how they're going to. The workplace is very different now. I mean, we've seen the revolution that AI has done just in the past couple of months with the natural language processors, and how they're getting so good, right, at answering us and at producing. I mean, ChatGPT has been something that's revolutionizing. So the people that are studying, they're going to need to come in with a mentality of how these things work. And they're going to be trained. So everything from universities, community colleges, high schools, it's going to be very important to produce the labor force that the future needs within these technologies.
You know, while you and Stephanie were being positive about the future and excited about the possibilities, you forced me into the role of Luddite, right? So, one of the problems with complex systems is they're highly sensitive to disruption, right? We see that in the airline industry where one hub experiences bad weather and the effects can ripple around the world, or Southwest software fails and suddenly we have a scandalous transportation issue. What has the Living Lab data told you, Daniel, about how resilient these systems are, how vulnerable they are on the other side of the coin?
Well, I mean, the vulnerability, we see it here quite often just because of what you said. I mean, systems, they go down. I mean, it might not be quite often, but if you get an internet failure or Wi-Fi failure, and then all of a sudden you're in a big area without coverage, well, forget about having that connected system, right? So here at the border, often enough, the system of customs clearance, usually on the Mexican side, all of a sudden stops working, and you see these long lines of trailers stopped and waiting to cross because they can't. Now, there's a manual form of getting them through. It's just going to take a lot longer, So the Living Lab data, it hasn't told us anything on how resilient they are, but that's part of what we're analyzing and researching. The point where we want to get to with the Living Lab, and I'll tell you that it's something new. It's something that we recently got funded, and we just started this logistics Living Lab. But to the point where we want to get to is where companies come to us, which would be to offer us their technologies, and that they tell us, well, this technology will do X, Y, and Z. And we test that, and we'll come back to them with a certificate or some sort of certification saying, well, your technology did X, but not Y and not Z, and that's what it did. And that's the transparency we want with the suppliers as well as with the utilizers of these technologies, and they're never going to be perfect. But the good thing is that I think with AI, with artificial intelligence and with machine learning, they're getting pretty good at fixing themselves, so it's something that technology and humans are going to work to make them more resilient. It's never going to be perfect, but they're getting quite up there.
I've got a kind of a trick question for you. Let's say we do a follow-up issue in 2 years. What do you think your article would be?
I mean, I think it's going to talk a lot more. I don't think we'll get to the autonomous vehicles in 2 years, but I think it's going to talk a lot more about how artificial intelligence and how machine learning are revolutionizing this sector as well as others. I think we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg on that, with everything that's been going on in these recent months. Everything from customer service, customer support, everything from predictive analytics, to having more supply chain visibility. So I think those two technologies are going to be very big in my article in 2 years from now.
I'm just glad to hear that you'll be writing it and it won't be an AI article in 2 years. So we'll still be here. We'll still.
Yes, of course. No, we will.
We hope. Daniel, thank you. And Stephanie, thank you as well. And before we close out, Steph, I always ask you if you would tell our viewers about, if they aren't already subscribing to the WQ, how they can access the issues and how they could make sure they see every issue.
Yes, wilsonquarterly.com. Subscribe. It's a free publication. We just want to make people smarter and provide information on the issues that matter most. And yeah, enjoy the publication.
Excellent. Thank you. And for those of you who would like to do that, it's out there right now, the new issue, Strategic Competition. My thanks to Stephanie Bowen, the editor of the issue, and Daniel Covarrubias, one of the contributors. Terrific discussion today. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed participating with you all. It was quite fun to write the piece. Thank you.
Excellent. And it's a great piece. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Wilson Center Now, and that you'll join us again soon. Until then, for all of us at the center, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for being here, and read the WQ.